none of your employees are going to stay with you because they can do the same thing at their buddy's gym, right? Why would they take 50% of collections when they can go throw a table up in their gym? You're never going to get people from other gyms to come to you. So like, it's not a very serious or mature business endeavor, right? Like, if you're going to open a business, not throw up a table in the back of your buddy's business. You know what I mean? Like, I really think we've got to start growing a bit past that methodology.
Hey, welcome back to the show. Today we have Dr. Jeff Moore on the podcast, and he's the CEO of Onward. If you guys don't already know, you probably do. But man, Jeff, thank you for your time. Welcome on the show.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me, Dave. I'm pumped to talk today.
Awesome. So I remember this was, like I said in the pre-interview, where we were talking about briefly, like you were doing Periscopes almost daily, it seemed like, and it was maybe, was it 6 a.m., 7 a.m. time frames? Like that's when I first kind of started, like I kind of started to learn about you, a little bit of your accent, a lot of bit of your energy. I was just loving it. I would jump on, was it 6 a.m., 6:37, something like that?
Yeah, totally. It was 6 a.m. Central Time because I was in Michigan back then. So it would have been, I think, 7 a.m. Eastern every weekday for years. You know, I mean, I think I discovered that maybe in 2013, totally accidentally. I was using it to show a buddy a technique, and I wasn't really aware that everyone who followed me could see it. But then I got back to my phone and they were like, dude, could you do more of that? And I was like, sure. So pretty soon every day I'm going live on there. That was a blast for years.
I love it. And so I legit an avid audience member of that. And cool. you would do hands-on manual therapy techniques and tips and strategies on like a coworker, a student you might have had at the time. You'd like make a cup of coffee, you'd bring the cup of coffee and you'd be like sipping it.
Yep.
You know, and like, you know, it's kind of like maybe half still dark outside. Like, so I remember that, and it was so engaging. There'd be live comments. People would be watching live from all over the country. It was so cool. And so was that like because I'm obviously now I'm doing video and doing more of it like I used to, but is that the beginning? That was the origin. I think you were telling Dr. Bobabenko recently on his show, like that, was that part of the origin of ICE?
So ICE really started a couple years before that, but that medium obviously allowed me to reach a lot more people, right? Because nobody knew who I was. So the only ICE courses that I had were people that were friends from other, parts of my life that would let me into their clinic, and I would try to get 4 or 5 people to come, but I didn't have an audience, And so all of a sudden I discovered Periscope, and like, Dave, that was before any Instagram Live, or we had no clue how to leverage it. But all of a sudden I had this show sort of that grew a bit. And so a bunch of folks would log on with me in the morning. Well, pretty soon when I said, hey, I've got a course coming up in Chicago, all of a sudden I would have 7 or 8 people, not 2 or 3. Both of those numbers sound silly nowadays, but back then that was a big deal. Like that made it so I wasn't losing money, and all of a sudden I could do this thing that I loved, and it was gaining some momentum.
That's awesome. What are some, maybe it was like the first episode, maybe it was after the first month or whatever, like, were there any aha moments of that? Like you said, where it converted more attendees to the actual in-person, was that it? Or maybe when they were first signing up, or was it like some of the audience you meet in person at PPS or one of your courses, and they're kind of like me, like fanboying, like here's what I remember, this and that, and you'd be like this, Spider-Man hip mobilization, the hip kind of flexed and abducted, and I'm like, man, I'm learning stuff, and this is like for free. So were there any aha moments where it went from like that one time to, all right, let me just do it for a couple of days, and now it's going to be just daily?
For sure. I mean, the aha moment happened pretty quick because I showed this technique to my buddy Jamie, who had asked me to show it to him, and went and treated a few patients, came back, and I had a bunch of comments on Twitter. So for those of you, which is probably almost everybody, that don't know what Periscope is, it was a way to go live on Twitter, which is now X. But before any of the other stuff, that was kind of the first medium to do that. So I came back to my phone, and there were a bunch of comments. And some guy said, hey, could you show me one of those for the neck? Because I had showed a lumbar manipulation. So I said, sure. Still wasn't really thinking about it. The next morning I did. And then I came back to my phone and there were like 12 comments like, dude, could you show me this and this? And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do this every damn day. Like, this is, first of all, hilarious. Like, everyone's engaging with me. They were making jokes. I'm like, this is just fun. I'm going to start every day like this. Then about 2 weeks went by, and there were probably, again, these numbers seem silly to more mature businesses, but when you're first starting out, there were like 20 people on. And I was like, holy man, that's more people than I've talked to in person ever, like at a course. So I began to realize, like, this might be a really convenient way to get people aware of a different way of looking at things that I've always wanted to share. And so about a week or two in, I was like, you know what? This is going to become like a usable medium for the company. I'm going to do this every day. And then the rest was kind of history.
So how long did that go? How long did that run? It seemed like
Dude, Dave, I went live every single morning, Monday through Friday, no matter what. Like, there were times I was in vacation with my family. I'd be in California in my car in the hotel parking lot, pitch black because it's Pacific time, 5 a.m. Pacific. I would go live yelling at my phone in my car. I never missed a day, I think for like 4.5 years, every single weekday. And then it got more popular and my staff got bigger. And so I had all these great colleagues who knew a lot of stuff I didn't, right? And so then we began to pass the mic and it became the PT on Ice Daily Show in 2016. So like 4 years later, it became where I was only on there once or twice a week and all the other faculty were sharing stuff.
It's incredible. Obviously, we have a ton to talk about. We want to talk about Onward, how you Fitness Forward, that whole approach. You guys have 35 and counting locations. I think you said 6 or 7 more in the next like 30 days or something insane, like awesome expansion. I want to talk about that. But for physical therapists or practice owners out there, what do you say to them if they're like, well, I didn't have enough, or I don't have enough like clinical expertise or like gumption or like confidence or whatever to like do what you've done. Like, you did a few things kind of on accident. You did some video, then it became like a habit. You kept doing it. There's a ton of therapists out there where they're, I think, afraid to like get criticized. Like, oh, your hand's in the wrong place, or why would you treat a patient this way or that way? Or why did you say this or that? Because Tony Maritato and others are saying like, get patient consent, film patients, if they're okay with it, put it on YouTube, put it on Facebook, get it out there. I think more of the world needs to see what we all can do as a profession. But I don't know, like the embarrassment or the hesitation of therapists and owners out there. Obviously, you're like a testament. Like, if you put it out there, it can expand the patient side of the business, but definitely on the, clinician side. Any tips, any strategies on just getting started or building some confidence with online video?
There's a couple things I would say. I think number one is the obvious thing we all know, but it's worth reiterating that if you're going to do anything meaningful, you're going to get some pushback. And one could even flip that comment and say, if you're not getting any pushback, you're not doing anything meaningful, right? Like, if you're going to push things forward, there has to be a certain amount of folks who dig in, late adopters, people that are afraid of change. What they're doing is working and you're moving things away from there. Those people are going to find a reason to try to knock you down, right? So like, you just have to accept that and almost look forward to it, because it is an indication that you're stretching people a little bit, and that's a very positive thing. So I think the way you look at it, you've got to kind of reconceptualize to, number one, it's inevitable if you're doing something worthwhile, and number two, it's probably a good thing, right? And an indication that things are starting to move in the right direction. So I would just say that base level. The other thing I would say for me personally, and maybe this is something that you can work on, I don't really know, I don't care at all. Like, I've always gravitated towards positive energy. Like, early on in those shows, there were plenty of people in those comments saying, hey, that's wrong, or that's dangerous, or whatever. But my mind always gravitates towards the folks who are like, hey, I just used that on a patient and it really seemed to help. Or like, for whatever reason, I have never focused on those other people that are always I always look for, like, am I serving somebody? Are they seeming to benefit? Am I being useful for a certain demographic? And if I am, Dave, that's good enough for me. Like, I'm just going to keep serving those folks, and the other stuff doesn't bother me. And I don't know if you can work on that, if it's part of my personality. I've just never cared.
That's incredible. Awesome. What about like your, again, we're going to get into Onward, but like, do you have some of these colleagues, these owners, these partners that own Onward locations that are like, I know Mitch Babcock was doing like, and he's got like a big Instagram following. Maybe Alan has been doing a little bit more, or maybe not, but are there certain owners and partners that you guys have where they're doing similar things like that, whether it's Facebook Live, Instagram video, that they're trying to implement some of those strategies to reach the patients, like to reach potential prospective patients who don't even know what physical therapy is, and using that as like the top of the funnel attraction to get people to come into these Onward locations?
For sure. So Mitch Babcock and Alan Fredendall actually own Health HQ in Fenton, Michigan, which is not an Onward, but very similar. One-on-one though, premium delivery. And then they actually run CrossFit Fenton, which is attached to it, but attached to it in the way that we like, where there's entrances to both from the outside, right? So they're independent spaces. One great reason to follow those guys is the way they run CrossFit Fenton. Like, for all the coaches out there, it is like the absolute premium version of running a fitness community. So like, if you're thinking about coaching or owning a gym, or like how they can work together, there are few, if any, better examples in the nation than what those guys are doing at Health HQ and then their partner CrossFit Fenton, and how they work together. To answer your question about people who are doing what you're talking about, using like social media aggressively to get after the patients, I think Zach Long, the barbell physio. So by the way, Zach Long is the actual CEO of Onward. I'm the CEO of ICE. I'm a managing partner at Onward. Not a big thing, but that's how we're organized. But I think Zach's account, the barbell physio, is a real leading indicator of like how to grow a massive, useful audience, that like, I mean, him and Pamela Gagnon and all they are bringing so much value all the time, and they're really bringing it to patients who then either access them virtually or they find an Onward clinic. But like, I think he's probably a best in class example of using social media to get after patients at scale, to really provide value, and then be able to connect that to delivery in person as well.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you for, I mixed up. But Alan is partnered with you through ICE. Is that it?
It's so convoluted, right? So Alan is the chief operating officer at ICE. He and Mitch Babcock own Health HQ in Fenton, Michigan. And then over on the Onward side, it's myself, Jordan Berry, and Zach Long that kind of operate as the central HQ of that company and serve all of the locations.
All right. Thank you for clarifying.
Sure.
Awesome. So with Onward, it's and correct me if I'm wrong. So Fitness Forward, you want to get people kind of moving. I love, you were just talking with Dr. Bobabenko on his YouTube. Guys, go check out that, subscribe, check it out. He showed like the dial from like disease to wellness to towards fitness, right? So yeah. Is that I've never seen that. Is that something that you guys created, something he created? I don't know where that came from.
Oh, beautiful. So first of all, that like dial of like sickness to wellness to fitness, that's a CrossFit methodology. So in like the CrossFit L1, which I mean, the journal is available free online. If anybody wants to go read about it, just type in CrossFit L1 journal. That PDF is widely available to be able to peruse and learn all about it. But that idea of taking someone measurably from sickness to wellness and all the way to fitness, that is like a core principle inside the CrossFit methodology. My comment with Bo and others is that journey, like if you're going to encounter someone who's in that sickness phase and you're going to move them to wellness and all the way to fitness, Dave, that journey, that road runs through musculoskeletal pain. There's no avoiding that. Like, you're not going to keep loading somebody up and have them recover and introduce novel movements. You're not going to do a stimulus hard enough and for long enough without developing some aches and pains. The question is, do you have a fitness forward provider who can help you navigate that, right? So someone that isn't going to let you leave the gym, they're going to help you use the gym to stay in on that path to get that dial all the way to the end. So my big goal with ICE and Onward is to create those people. And Dave, just to give some context, it makes the whole thing make more sense. Onward was a necessity of ICE. So what happened was when ICE got really a lot bigger, like in like 2016, 17, I started getting all these emails and calls, Dave, and they were like, at the same time, the most exciting and the most depressing calls I've ever experienced. So people would call me and they would say, Jeff, I'm so fired up. Like, I just went to a few ice courses. I want to load people up now. I understand the methodology. I want to be fitness forward, but I can't. My gym doesn't have a squat rack. My colleagues don't do this stuff, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, well, dude, in some ways, this is almost worse than not knowing in the first place. Like, now you know what you want to do, but you can't do it. So that enough of those people got a hold of me that in 2019, I said, enough's enough. We're just going to build a clinic that's like custom crafted to deliver fitness forward, manual therapy skilled, psychologically informed care. Like, we're going to create physical therapy 2.0 environments so that all these people coming out of ICE's curriculum have somewhere to go. So that's where Onward came from, and that's why it exists.
Love it. Awesome. I was going to ask you, so we do one-on-one 60-minute visits, but home visits, right? So like most of the time in New York City, it's in someone's home apartment. Sometimes if they live in a nice building, some of the buildings have a small
sure.
So then we could do that. Sometimes it's like we're visiting tourists in like a hotel room for 2 days or 2 weeks or whatever. So sometimes we could use that hotel gym, but not always. Some of my clientele are like 50, 60, 70, maybe 70, 80-year-old retired, bankers, investors. Am I short-sighted I was thinking before having you on here, and I'm thinking like, I don't know, like maybe I haven't asked good enough questions. Maybe is that right for my clientele? Like, do they want that? I don't know. Like, do they want to do farmer's carry and carry kettlebells? I've got some older, investor type, semi-retired or fully retired individuals doing that type of stuff in their home because they already had kettlebells or they already had weights. Any tips for me? Like, any insight? Like, do I need to ask better questions? Do I need to, offer like, hey, here's another way to expand your fitness? Maybe I need to refer them to a fitness forward practice. Once we get them out of disease up to wellness, we refer them out maybe to a place where they can get under a barbell or a squat rack. Like, and I don't want to say like 60, 70, 80 is like the age is not necessarily a barrier for that, right? So like, maybe we're limited? Am I short-sighted by thinking that the home is limited to do what you guys do, but in someone's home?
I mean, there's a natural reality there that, especially if someone is a bit along that journey we're talking about, there's not going to be enough load to give these people an awesome fitness stimulus. But it also sounds like sometimes you're seeing folks for a handful of sessions and they're kind of maybe traveling back to their life or going back and forth. In that environment, the beautiful thing is now, like with True Coach or OnForm or whatever, like there's so many ways that you can do the body work. We always talk about our goal is to manage symptoms to maximize fitness, right? Like that's what we do. We manage people's symptoms so they can go and maximize their fitness. You very well could do the body work in those environments and then have them videotape the movements they're worried about or do the programming through these apps. I mean, I see a real opportunity for you all to like get in there, put the fire out, get them willing to go back to the gym, wherever that might be. And then when they do, sending you those videos and doing some analyses and doing some programming through those apps. Like, I really think there could be a beautiful combination there.
Awesome. Cool. There was another thing that you spoke with Bo about, because Dr. Bo brought up like the physical exams, like the kind of the physical therapy, like checkup, like, even if you're doing great, if you're going back to the gym, you have your own personal trainer or whatever, like if you don't need us, you don't need Onward, whatever, like you get out of, your musculoskeletal ache, pain, condition, whatever, you go live your life, you're doing your workout somewhere else. He was bringing up the idea of like that physical check-in. What about like, because what we do is we're charging a little bit more because we're going to someone's home. So we're kind of like on the low end, like 250, 300 per visit. Weekends, it's like 500 per visit because I got to pay my therapist to go out there and do that on weekends if they want to. With the current like reimbursement rates, the way that they are, even out of network, we're looking at like for the new year, like concierge, like either like an annual subscription or a monthly subscription. Is that something that you guys have ever thought of or tested it Onward? Like, is that something that you guys have already dabbled in?
Yeah. So first off, I want to be really clear in admitting my own mistake, because maybe we have a chance to reshape some philosophy out there of folks who are listening. When I first got out of school, Dave, I was so proud of myself if I only saw people for a couple sessions, right? Like,
I remember you saying this, yeah.
And now, Dave, I look back and I am just disgusted. Like, I'm so upset with myself. Like, the fact that I was so proud just to get them back to baseline, which is the condition where they got hurt doing what they love, and I'm leaving them right there. Like, looking back, it's like, dude, what were you thinking, you know? But I didn't, it was so insurance driven, and it was so like, you were patted on the back if you were efficient, right? And it's like, I can't believe I let that drive and limit what I can offer these humans who are trying to get to a different level of health, right? And so nowadays, my thoughts are the exact opposite, right? It would take an awful lot of sessions every year for somebody who's really decided that they want to maximize their health span and lifespan to get everything out of you that you have to offer. Certainly that number is monthly, if not more frequently, that you could be constantly delivering everything from nutrition to programming to Olympic lifting to, I mean, we could go on and on and on, right? So we really try to encourage our clients who say, look, I'm not trying to get back to where I was. I know that was not my ceiling. Your job is to help me find my ceiling. And I want to use this resource. I mean, when we start hearing those beliefs, it's like, look, get in here every month. And when you're having aches and pains, we'll address those. When you're not, we'll look at performance. When you have an event coming up, we'll look at programming. But what we have to offer is so deep. Use as much as you want to maximize your life. So we are very deep in that model.
I love that you touched on this, and also that you mentioned the insurance component, because we've all been like in these in-network insurance practices where a patient gets authorized 8 visits, and then the next time it's like, oh, now they're authorized 4 visits, and then now they're authorized 2 visits, and then then they're cut off, or 1 visit, and then they use all their benefits, or they still have visits that are on their plan but not being approved by the insurance or something wacky, insane. You and I agree on all that, on insurance and everything. And what I've seen, we have a ton of people that pay out of pocket. We do have a medical biller that bills out of network insurance. So I want to come back to that in a second, because that's a little sidebar. But I've been doing this now, doing home visits. Now I'm seeing 4 visits a month. I have one client that I've seen forever, and I have my therapist. I'm trying to get them busy, have them stay busy. Got a 7-month-old at home, so I'm good with not treating patients and trying to grow the practice. And when a healthcare consumer or a patient or client, whatever you want to call them, athlete, whatever you guys call them,
Yep.
when they start in the beginning of the relationship paying out of pocket, it seems like it's easier for them to understand, oh yeah, I'll just pop in. I'll call Jeff, I'll call Zach or Mitch or anyone. I'll just go pop in, or I'll pay whatever they charge, a monthly membership or the a la carte, per visit, whatever, premium, because they've seen the value, they've seen how it's different, as opposed to if in the in-network insurance clinics where someone has physical therapy or whatever for 8 visits, they're discharged. Then they're like, oh, you can pay out of pocket and come here. And they're like, but I pay out of pocket, but I get on average, the in-network experience.
Oh yeah.
As opposed to one-on-one with one of my therapists or one of your therapists. And it's different. And if they pay on the first visit, it's easy for them to understand the continuum thing, the continue into fitness over months and years, as opposed to episodic in-network, and then trying to get them to understand, here's why it would be worth 100 or 200 or whatever out of pocket visits. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, a lot. They're different.
I know it went long there. I'm sorry.
No, it's great. So you know what? If you'll allow me, let's separate that into 2 different key points, because I think sometimes we say very flippantly, because you and I are used to it, and what you're providing, it's second nature to you. So we almost ride right by it, but we're so quick to say, yeah, the customer sees the value, right? Okay. That's actually quite hard to make happen. We act as though it's always going to happen. So when people ask about in-network, out-of-network, I have 100% confidence, because we've now seen it at nearly 40 locations across a wide variety of geographies. I've got receipts. This works, right? In a wide variety of areas. But there is some seriously foundational components to making it work. When somebody comes in, you have to be able to deliver an incredibly concise yet thorough evaluation. You've got to have all of the modalities. You've got to be able to incorporate dry needling and myofascial decompression and spinal manipulation. You've got to be able to go out and have fluency in their Olympic lifts, in their muscle ups. You have to be able to chat about their programming for their marathon, for their CrossFit competition. It is only when you have all of that that they walk out and say, well, holy man, I used to go to like 7 people to get that. I used to go to someone to get spinal adjustment, someone to get soft tissue work, someone to get coaching and programming, someone to get nutrition. And now I just go to one person and it's only $175. Like, that is so reasonable. But Dave, that emotion only happens if you actually deliver that. So you need to gain the skills, because I hear way too much in the mastermind business guru world or whatever. It's not about the skills. Yeah, go try it. It's about the skills. Like, yes, you need to be able to market as well. But if the customer doesn't say, oh my goodness, that was incredible, you are not going to make it in this space. So it is absolutely about both. So I think that's really important to speak to. The other side of it is you're going after a different customer. If you go after someone who is looking to use their insurance and looking to get a copay, they're going to have there's going to be a lot of friction in their conversion to a cash pay model. We have our prices right on our websites. It's $150, $175. It's right there. No packages, no different prices for eval versus follow-up. It's always the same. The people that come to us are ready to pay that. We've already filtered out folks who don't value fitness or wellness to a level where they're comfortable with that. It's a different customer. So I think getting the right customer in your door is a really big part of avoiding that friction. And that comes with transparency on the front end.
I love it. So you guys, as you open a new clinic, how do you get awareness for that new clinic? You're going to help that new therapist launch that new location. You're putting the website out there. You're probably helping them on the website. You have the prices displayed.
Yep.
How did then you guys maybe you have part of a game plan, a playbook on like marketing, and go meet every local, business owner and I don't know, influencer or whatever. Like, any tips like on like the playbook of like opening up that new location? Obviously, you have a ton of like the knowledge, experience, data on what works. What are some things that like you go and you're like, all right, we got this, because you're opening up new clinics right now.
Yep.
How do you get in front of the fitness forward individual that you know is your ideal client or could be your ideal client?
For sure. Like, Dave, it's all about relationships, right? Like, it's about getting out. And one thing that we do at Onward that is unique and very intentional is that we don't put our clinics in gyms, right? We have standalone buildings that are autonomous and neutral. And the point of that is we want every fitness community in the city to feel comfortable sending their people to us. They're not sending their members to another gym, which obviously they don't want to do, right? Like, they're trying to retain their own members. So we are very neutral to be able to serve the entire fitness community. And then it's a matter of going out and working out at all these things, right? Like going to hit Pilates once a week and hitting a run club once a week and coaching at CrossFit twice a week. And you got to get out and be in these communities. The beauty is you don't need thousands of people. I mean, if you're if you're a cash-based provider and you're seeing 25 a week and you're charging 175 and your rent is reasonable, you're doing pretty well. So, I mean, you only need to have a following of 40 to 60 people that want to come in quite a bit and get healthy as hell. And I mean, you're off and running. So we just build the relationships. Now, Dave, the brand does a lot of the work for us, right? Like, we just opened Kansas City this week. Matt Sullivan is the owner out there. He's already got a full faculty of 3 people or a full staff of 3 people. And we've already got patients at the door because the brand, everyone knew it was coming. And so now the brand is doing a lot of the work every year going forward. That's only going to be more and more true, right? Lululemon doesn't need to convince you in Chicago they make great leggings. Like, you're going to go, their stuff is good, right? So like, it's going more and more. I don't want to say it's getting effortless, but it's definitely getting easier with every city we add on to the list.
That's incredible. The Matt Sullivan, who already has 3 other PTs or 3 PTs total, are those PTs that like came from his network, PTs that came from your courses that like have followed you over the years, or it's just your whole ecosystem?
So that's the beauty of it, right, Dave? Is like all these people who are getting trained through ICE, there's some very clear high performers that really stand out. And we tend to either tap them or they tend to reach out. Well, now we've kind of got them vetted because they've been to a bunch of courses. My faculty have been like, oh, dude, that person's great. Well, now we already know they're solid and they have the skills. So they work right over. It's so fluid then to bring them right over into Onward where that mentorship continues and all the support's already there.
That's awesome. Now, the one of the reasons I'm assuming, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, of you guys popping up new locations that are independent brick and mortar, not attached to a gym, because I've heard some of this, the pros and cons of this. The pros of like a physical therapist pops open a treatment table at a CrossFit gym or whatever, they immediately start getting referrals. Maybe they already have a gym membership there, they work out there. So that makes sense. But if they start to scale, you're saying, and I want to read between the lines, other CrossFit gym owners don't want to send their members to that therapist.
For sure.
Like CrossFit Fenton, if they didn't have HQ and Mitch and Alan,
right, they
wouldn't want to send their member with like a tweaked shoulder or a tweaked hip or something to like this other great PT, this physical therapist that is in, CrossFit XYZ down the road. Why would they do that? Is that part of why you guys are independent brick and mortar?
Exactly. Right. Like, when we set up shop, Dave, in a town, we're talking about serving that entire metropolitan area fitness forward community. Like that every single time, that's the goal, right? Like Nashville now has what, 3 locations, Hendersonville, downtown, Murfreesboro. Dude, we're surrounding the city to serve thousands and thousands of people. Well, to do that, we need every single fitness community, whether it's a gym or a running club or whatever, to feel comfortable territory-wise sending their people to your building. It's got to be neutral and autonomous. So yeah, the low barrier to entry is to throw your table in your buddy's gym for $200 a month and see some of their 250 members. And I guess that's okay for a while, and then none of your employees are going to stay with you because they can do the same thing at their buddy's gym, right? Why would they take 50% of collections when they can go throw a table up in their gym? You're never going to get people from other gyms to come to you. So like, it's not a very serious or mature business endeavor, right? Like if you're going to open a business, not throw up a table in the back of your buddy's business. You know what I mean? Like, I really think we've got to start growing a bit past that methodology.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let me go back to insurance out-of-network billing. So kind of had a same experience years ago. I was with another company and then I was like, wow, they're charging, $310 for the evals. This is New York City. $280 for the follow-ups. I was making, about half that for every visit. Again, I'm doing the home visits. So that kind of, some of that money kind of factors in like time and travel and all that, whatever. So I realized like, oh, they're private pay for some people, but then they're billing out-of-network insurance benefits for people that have out-of-network insurance benefits, right? So then I got this medical biller, been using them for like 5 or so years. I'm kind of surprised, maybe, and you can push back. I'm surprised that like you guys, and I think all the insurance companies are basically terrible. It's a racket. It's insane. But we've had, obviously the beneficiary, the client, the patient pays down their out-of-network deductible. Sometimes the out-of-network deductible is $1,000 or $2,000, but sometimes it's like 8 or 10 grand. We know they're never going to hit their 8 or 10 grand typically in a year. The plans where they hit their out-of-network deductible, we bill their out-of-network insurance, and their copay, their cost per visit could go from the $200 or $300 per visit down to like $30 or whatever their in-network copay is. Then we're billing their out-of-network insurance benefits for the follow-up visits.
Yep.
And I was just saying this on another podcast recently. Some of the out-of-network plans are okay or decent, or they're paying on the low end $125, which is not impressive, and then sometimes $350, $450 per visit for a 1 visit, 4-unit visit.
Yep, is
kind of interesting. So that's why I've kept this biller, even though the biller takes 10% because he's a madman. Sure. And he can charge 10% instead of like the 5, 6, 7, 8% you see somewhere else. You've never considered some of that where you have like a biller at, Onward HQ, you check everyone's insurance benefits, you bill some of those insurances. Do you guys do any of that, or it's completely out of pocket and $175, $185 per visit, and then you give them a super bill?
It's that one. It really is that one. We generate that super bill. They're more than welcome to submit that. we do not have someone doing that billing for a number of reasons that probably would require a whole episode. But for the sake of some level,
I'll have you back for that episode.
Okay. But there's a number of reasons we do it. Number one, it's important to kind of think about the why of what we do, right? Because it justifies some of the what or the how. We are working to become the first large physical therapy brand that is synonymous with excellence. Generally speaking, the bigger brands have gotten nationwide, and we're not going to throw anybody under the bus here, but you don't tend to think elite, right? You tend to think volume. You tend to think, a lot of text. The bigger these companies got, the worse the quality got. We want to do the exact opposite. We want a brand of physios where when people see it, they think excellence, perfect, different. We want to create that. The way you create that is covering the entire country. What makes that happen fast is not worrying about anything that's state specific. By not worrying about Blue Cross New York versus Blue Cross Michigan. Dude, we got to move fast. Like if we're going to get, several hundred clinics going here, I don't know if we can get into the thousands, but I know we can get into the hundreds. We don't have time for this really. Like we got to get to city to city to city to city. And the processes have to work smooth together. And it can't be like, hold on, we got to figure out what's going on in Wyoming they made this change for Aetna. Now I've got to explain. We can't do this. We got to move faster than that. So there's other reasons beyond that are philosophical, but that's one of the bigger mechanical ones.
So some of the other regional players might, or national players might push back at that and say to you, well, you could move faster, or like you might not move as fast right now even with Onward, because every single patient is like, I love they're a true customer, that they're actually paying their hard-earned dollars. I do love that. I love that. But the fact that they're paying out of pocket, that there's going to be typically a little less utilization of total services compared to like the in-network, right? Like in-network, there's more utilization of total visits because the subsidized care with the payer, right?
Sure.
So what if some regional or national, in-network chain was like, you don't need it, but if they were like chiming in or whatever, hey, you could get national, you could get scale faster if, you accepted some of these, I don't know, Medicare Part B, or if you accepted some of these out-of-network payers or whatever, you would still push back because it kind of goes against like the ethos, like of why you're kind of doing it this whole style.
Yeah. I mean, first of all, they don't want me to grow fast. We're coming for them as it is, right? Like they don't need to give me any fuel to expedite the process. But yeah, exactly. It goes against the ethos or the philosophy or the purity of how we do what we do, right? Because now you're making different arguments. Now hey, you have out-of-network benefits, and it becomes a whole different kind of a sales pitch versus this very pure, what we have is worth more than what we're selling it for. You're going to agree the first time you come. I only want people to come the first time that makes sense. I don't want other people coming that don't really see the value of what we do. So it's a very different way of approaching the customer. And I would tell those people giving me that advice let me find the ceiling first, right? Like we're getting busy in every city at a rate that I almost can't keep up with. Like, let me see if we hit a stopping point first, and then we'll chat about it.
Got it. Fair enough. You posted something on Facebook recently. Let me pull it up. So it was about leadership. I took a screenshot. The larger you risk, the better you recruit and retain. It's not a shortage of employees in the market. It's a shortage of risk tolerance in the leadership. So what do you mean by that?
Yeah, so this goes back to our earlier conversation about there's nothing inherently wrong with throwing your table in the back of your buddy's gym, right? The issues, though, if you track that out, what you've done is you've removed your barriers for entry, right? That's why you did it. It was cheap, it was easy, etc. Well, Dave, the problem is whoever you hire first, it's also cheap and easy for them to go do it. So if you pay them 35 or 40%, in 6 months, they're going to look and say, well, why am I taking 35 or 40%? Why don't I just go throw a table in my buddy's gym? So if you don't take a level of risk that makes your employees say, dude, if I left here, I could never work somewhere this sweet. If I left here, I could never make this kind of cash. If you don't take risk to create a premium environment for them to work on that they can't easily replicate themselves. If you don't take risk and pay them 50%, even though you know there's not going to be a whole lot left over, they're going to crunch the numbers and say, I can do this myself. That's why everybody has a hiring problem. It's why most cash-based out-of-network clinics are 2.5 people deep. In 3 years in, it's like, dude, it's not working because the people are coming on and saying, well, I could easily do this too. So if you're not willing to take risk, you're never going to have any level of retention because there's no risk in leaving you.
So the only way for any of the cash out of network practice owners out there watching or listening, the only way for them to retain, to attract on the front end or retain therapists is pay them more right now and or raise your prices so that then there's either it comes out of your pocket if you don't raise your prices as the owner, or you raise your rates and you can kind of keep your same, whatever you're paying yourself, 15, 20%, whatever your margins are. Those are the only two ways. Anything else I'm overlooking?
I'm not saying they're the only two ways. I'm saying I think at scale, those things would need to be incorporated to make this work. Because Dave, at some point, we got to stop playing pretend, right? Like these people who are working for you need to live. And hopefully if they're working for you, you want them to live a decent life. Well, what does a decent life look like when you've got $150,000 of student loans and you're living in a relatively nice metropolitan area? You and I don't want to say it, but we both know that number's probably around 100 grand a year. Like, and that's not going to leave you a bunch of money to go play, but that will give you a life where every month you're not wondering if the money's going to be there for rent. Well, run the math, man, right? 50% of 175 at 25 patients a week after taxes winds up being right about that number. The money doesn't just magically appear out of nowhere. They've got to make a decent percentage of what's a reasonable price to charge the customer. And that's the only way you're ever going to make it happen. Otherwise, they're going to leave in 6 months. Of course, they have to.
Love it. With your new Onward locations, is there like a structure with the new employees? So are they all 1099? Are they all W-2? Is it like W-2, but they're paid based off of, the hitting the 20 or 25 visits per week? Like obviously the math has to work for like the brick and mortar Onward to like actually function and all that. And if you're not comfortable with mentioning it, let me know. But like, is that part of the structure?
So the salary part or like if they hit X, Y, Z, we don't do any of that. Right from day one, they get 50% of every visit, right? So right out of the gates, but there's no base salary. So the first couple of months for an onboarding employee is sometimes thin. And I only say sometimes because we now have enough locations that are like overflowing with patients that like when you walk in, you've got half your schedule full simply because our clinic was so busy. So that is much more common now than it was 3 years ago. But even then, things are still lean, but a little bit of leanness is good, right? For a few months to like get
Absolutely.
you hungry and, get you climbing and building your patience. But then, once you're 6-8 months in and you're seeing 20, 25 a week, there you are at that $80,000 equivalent or whatever. And now you never got to build again as long as you'll move. I mean, you're off and rolling. You've got those relationships. And so that is how we set it up. It's very, very strict. Eat what you kill, right? 50% of the session, right? The pricing, it goes up every year a little bit. And so it's very, very clean and transparent. 1099 and W-2 is decided on by the clinic. Some of them have more strict, like standard operating procedures, more strict scheduling, things that are more, that's more of a W-2 setup. Some of them are much more flexible with how they schedule and how they actually conduct operations. That's more of a 1099. That adjustment is by clinic.
Got it. So, 50%, anyone watching or listening, like that's fair, very fair.
We would never pay somebody under 50%. Our contractors actually make a little bit more. 50% is more the W-2 setup. Yeah, we would never consider paying a physical therapist under 50% of collections. And that's a pretty hard rule.
Yeah. And do you have health insurance benefits factored into that, or they have to pay their own out of pocket? Maybe you help them. Do you help them find?
Right. So again, clinic by clinic, right? So a lot of flexibility there. And so there's, different stipends or different things, but there's nothing baked in as far as like group health insurance policies and things of that nature.
Got it. Fair enough. What have I missed? Like we've caught up in person now. We like barely did a pre-interview. We're like, let's just get right into it. Let's hit record. This is the first time speaking. I thank you so much for your time. This is incredible. I'm pumped. Just like, I feel like I'm back in the Periscope days watching on Twitter and you got your hot cup of coffee, 7 a.m. Eastern time and riffing on, excellence and striving for excellence. What are some things that are on your mind that you plan to put out there on social media? Any other things that are like coming down the pike for you guys?
For so many years, Dave, my world was ebbing and flowing, right? Like different interests, South College. I did a lot of different stuff. I'm pretty locked in now. I train people through ICE. I facilitate their career through Onward. I know where the rest of my path is. And now it's a matter of, can we just dominate the United States? Like, and then if we do that, can we dominate globally? And it's pretty obvious what the model is, how to get folks ready, and then how to execute it. We know it works. We just have to be efficient. The thing that I want folks to think about, though, is back to what you and I were talking about. There's so much argument about, but Jeff, it won't work in my community. And that's fine, right? I'm going to prove that all wrong every year. Well, once there's 90 and then 400, at some point, those people will say, oh, shoot, look at that. It did seem to work. The issue, Dave, is excellence. And I want your audience to think about that. You do have to get so good that people say this person should be charging more, even when you're charging $200. Excellence solves everything. The people that are saying, and this is a harsh statement, Dave, and feel free to cut it out later if you want to. The people that are saying my patients wouldn't pay that probably wouldn't for what they're offering. If they feel that way, they're probably right. My challenge is we don't need to fix the patient. We need to fix the product, right? You need to begin offering care that is so elite and so skilled and so dialed that you can tell the patient would pay 4 times their copay. That, Dave, that's the excellence is the answer, and the rest of it will take care of itself.
And some of the tactical things around excellence, at least the things that I try to train and onboard and coach my new therapist, or even, therapists that are seasoned, but they're new to us, is like obviously like all the soft skills and, like motivational interviewing and, active listening and all that type of stuff is important. When you're saying excellence, I think you're also probably talking about things like pre and post tests, like getting a change in that first visit. Is that something that you guys strive to do as well? I'm sure.
So Dave, the answer is yes to your question, right? Like it's everything. It's the perfect 60. That's what we call it Onward, is the perfect 60. What does the perfect 60 minutes look like, right? And it's a lot of the things you mentioned on the front end, right? The active listening, hearing their whole story, drilling down to their deepest goals, right? When they first tell you why they want to do something, right? That's never the actual
official surface level.
Exactly. Then you keep digging and you keep digging, and all of a sudden they say, my dad, who passed away when I was 28 years old, had said that one day he dreamed of me completing a certain okay, now we're getting down there, right? So that ability to get to some of those emotional whys for why somebody wants to improve. I feel like my kids, don't know if I'm going to last or are concerned. You start to feel that stuff, right? It's that. But then it's that retest, right? It's that person who comes in with that screaming radiculopathy who can't take a full stride because their neural tension's so hot, walking out looking bewildered, like, dude, how does my leg feel this much better? I've been here for 20 minutes. But they're also walking out with some nutritional advice about decreasing inflammation and sleep hygiene. They're also walking out, right? And they're walking out like, this is crazy. That person heard my whole story. I feel like I really like them and connected to them. My leg feels a million times better. I know what I'm shooting for next time. I know what we're tracking. Like, I know how to get a hold of them. Like, their mind is blown. If you can't do that, you won't be successful. All the marketing in the world, just because you get 1 million new patients, if they don't come back, all you have is a leaky bucket. So like the biggest concern, I am so bullish and so optimistic about the out-of-network cash-based space. But I am telling you right now, a lot of people marketing their success in their tricks and their tactics are going to bankrupt a lot of eager physical therapists, because it's not just about marketing. It's about creating that impression in humans that leave the door, and that comes down to skill. And you can't cheat that. You can't market your way out of that.
And you have to be likable. You have to have the clinical excellence, the clinical skills. All of that whole package is why someone comes back. And that's why they come back more than just like, oh, you have your 6 authorized visits and now you're discharged, whatever. But no, it's almost, and this is where we have a lot of commonalities. It's like we get in front of these patients or clients and they become lifers. Like they stay with us for months or years. And maybe they move around a little bit. Maybe we don't see them for 3, 6, 9 something months, but then they come back, they have a new musculoskeletal issue or a new goal or whatever the thing is. And I believe everyone always has another goal, another thing for them to
Yes.
or and achieve, and you just got to find it.
Yeah. I mean, dude, I always say, what have you stopped thinking is possible, right? Like, how many people will be like, well, dude, I mean, I used to run, but I mean, not anymore. What do you mean not anymore? Like, I mean, obviously I haven't skied in years. What do you mean, obviously? Like let's unpack.
My bad knees, Jeff. I got a bad knee.
Yeah, like, dude, so many people think that a third of their life is over for them. And all of a sudden you start saying, well, dude, why is that not on our goal list? Like, that's totally reasonable. And they start to dream of like, dude, maybe I've got a lot of years left that look a lot different than I thought. You're changing their entire world. Like, they are rethinking their future because they've begun to realize I have an ally here who, as I bump into things, is going to work me through it. I'm going to start considering that the next part of my life could look very different. And by different, I mean better.
Love it. You previously had an evidence in motion connection, EIM, right?
Yeah.
So they have EIM and then like Confluent, like I feel like they used EIM on the educational side as like the farm system, the minor leagues to like get therapists and or clinic directors or whatever for Confluent. And then you have magically a very similar approach. You have the ice physio, iced out physio, and then now you have Onward. Was that on purpose? Was it like using the educational side, and then it was the tapping some of the high level individuals that were like eager, motivated, seemed like great candidates to start popping up to Onward locations? Was that on purpose, or it just kind of evolved naturally?
No, Dave, every like step forward that I've taken has always been reluctant, never on purpose, right? Like, I didn't want to take on a whole new enterprise of like building clinics. Ice is rocking, but it was like, we were rolling. It seemed more like a problem that I had to fix. Like, if I didn't create homes for these people, what's the purpose of training them, right? Very similarly, Dave, right now, a lot of time I spend is in real estate because we have autonomous locations, right? Well, those are expensive, especially if you're getting gouged by real estate moguls who live in the Caribbean. So now what we're doing is buying the locations, right? So like we're almost done with Denver. We bought Denver's new location. We bought Atlanta's new location. So now what I'm realizing is if I don't get our monthly rates down for these locations, it's not going to be a profitable model in 5 or 10 years. So now we're solving the real estate problem. So we started a real estate company and now we're learning how to buy and build physical locations. I only bring that up to say what I've done in my career is ran as hard as I could until a problem wall said, dude, if you don't solve this, you can't keep going. All right, cool, we'll solve it. But like, none of it was predetermined. It's just kind of encountering and solving in real time.
That's incredible. And so is that a real estate fund, or is the money coming from some of the new owner and some of you guys at Onward? Like, how do you get the money for the next location?
Yeah, so Fitness Forward Realty is what it's called, of course. So Fitness Forward Realty is an independent real estate company now that we basically have annual cash campaigns where we've got a number of contributors that are kind of all a part of my ICE Onward world, but a separate organization that put in money every year for the down payment. You buy the property and then same thing the next year. And then, as you know, or not sure how much real estate time you've spent, but like once you start lumping these loans together and running some analyses, you can get some money out of there to buy the next one. So the idea is it'll snowball, and in a few years, we want to buy all of them. It's our last step of autonomy, Dave, is owning all the physical spaces because right now, if we're crushing, this drives me crazy. And I'm not sure if your listeners care, but I'll be quick.
Keep going.
Dude, if we're crushing it at a location, it drives me nuts that landlord could choose to sell it or choose to make a change. And now our customer doesn't get to come back to that spot they know and love. Or they say, okay, you can't put your squat rack in there anymore because someone opened next door that needs it really cool. Dave, I can't tolerate someone else telling me that we can't do this thing perfectly, which means we have to own all the buildings. Now we're running
the whole process, A to Z.
That's it, right? This is the very last thing, from training people to business success to owning the footprint. If we get this figured out, we're untouchable. Like we can strive for perfection, and the only people that can screw it up is us. And that's what I want.
Perfect place to leave it. Incredible. Thank you so much for your energy. Thank you for your leadership, leading the physical therapy profession. Been a fan for so many years. I can't believe it's been this long where we haven't spoken, but I wanted to make it happen. Thank you for getting on here. What's a good place if someone's watching or listening? They're obviously going to love your motivation, your energy, all that. If they want to take a course, they go to ice.physio. Is that correct?
Yeah, they can go to any of the domains, ptonice.com, ice.physio is great. Search Institute of Clinical Excellence, it'll pop up. Any of those are awesome. And when you do that, do it with intention. Whole different conversation, Dave. I'm sure we're at the end of our time, but we organize the curriculum to help you specialize in a certain population. So don't just go in there willy-nilly. If you want to serve endurance athletes, go do the endurance athlete certification and then stop giving ICE your money. Take that skill and go crush the endurance athlete community until you've gotten your ROI at least 3x what you spent. Then come back and get the next specialty. But that's how we organize. So make sure you use that curriculum in a way that helps you crush it business-wise. And then as far as reaching out to me, my email is jeffmooredpt@gmail. You can find me on Instagram. My cell phone is 303-359-3597. You can text me. You can call me. I'm here to help folks grow.
Jeff, thank you so much. This is awesome.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
Hey, it's Dave Kittle. Are you a healthcare business owner or physical therapy practice owner who is looking to figure out your succession plan or exit strategy? We might be able to help. And in fact, we may be interested in acquiring your practice. If you're interested, you can reach out to me. Shoot me an email at dave@conciergepainrelief.com. That's DAVE@CONCIERGE painrelief.com, or you can call me at any time, 646-781-8884.